Ace Podcast.
Hello and welcome back to Vaguely Accurate. Happy Australian Day for everyone who was out celebrating yesterday. Hope you don't feel too rough today. Today on the show we are meeting Leanda Mason. She is a PhD candidate from Curtin University looking into, I suppose, the ecology of trapdoor spiders in Perth. I didn't actually know we had trapdoor spiders in Perth, so this episode was a bit of a surprise for me from the get-go. But I learned some fantastic things, and Leanda was passionate about everything she had to say. As always, if you haven't checked out Ace Podcast yet, you should definitely check out our network. We have tons of great shows on there, from everything from pop culture to Dungeons and Dragons playthrough, science episodes, and current events. One show I've been listening to recently I really like is Battle for the Ages. It's hosted by two guys, Andy and Greg, who pretty much have verbal diarrhea and verbal fisticuff fights to debate on two topics, whether they're passionate about them or not. It's really entertaining. It's great just if you want to turn off but still have something really, really intriguing to listen to. So I'm not going to delay it too much today. We'll get into the show. I hope you enjoy.
Is Leanda Mason. I am studying trapdoor spiders. Mm-hmm. My PhD project's looking at the effects of urbanisation on trapdoor spiders, which is quite broad, but I'm doing some very specific experiments.
I didn't even know WA had trapdoor spiders. I'm sure that's coming off as quite naive, but...
Oh no, I get that a lot. It's fine. I was actually walking through Bold Park once and there was a couple and they were like, "Oh, what are you doing?" And I said, "Oh, just doing a survey for trapdoor spiders." And they're like, "Oh, you'll have to go over east for that." And I was like, "Oh, really? I'll just stop then. Sorry."
I'll just stop doing what I know. Okay.
Yeah, sorry. My bad.
So what got you into looking into trapdoor spiders themselves, or just, I suppose, arachnids?
Oh, how did I get into it?
Yeah.
So when I was in undergrad, I met this lady who's the trapdoor spider expert of pretty much Australia.
Crazy spidey lady.
Yeah, spider lady. I think there's a documentary on her actually. She's 88 this year.
Oh wow!
But when I met her, she was 82, so she's just retired.
Just retired at 82.
Yeah.
Good long career for her.
Oh, she's still working. She's still trying to publish stuff. So
damn. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, at least it gives her meaning, keeps her busy at that old age.
Oh, definitely. Keeps the mind active. I think it's really important. But,
incredibly.
And she's got so much knowledge that's just accumulated over the years. It's kind of sad that some of that might be lost, you know?
Yeah.
So I met her. I was actually having a wine to a different lecturer because the unit didn't cover terrestrial arthropods, which is something that I was always interested in. I was doing a double major in zoology and conservation biology.
Yeah.
So I'm interested in conservation and biodiversity, and obviously that leads into invertebrates because invertebrates have one of the highest species diversities, but they're just not well researched.
Or even communicated about. Like, a lot of people were under the misconception, like, it's similar with reptiles, but I mean, reptiles still get that extra publicity.
Yeah.
A lot of people, or even like myself, are under the misconception that, oh, it's a spider, it's an invertebrate, just don't touch it, it might kill you, it might do that. And people just tend to think of almost them as an umbrella of pests.
Oh, yeah.
That makes sense?
Yeah, I get really annoyed when they have the spider on the side of one of those pest fans. I'm like, they're not a pest. They control the pests.
They do amazing jobs. We had I think it took me ages to figure it out because we don't have any of these spiders in the UK, so it's all new to me.
Oh.
But we had a spider. She was about, I'd say she was like a large orb-weaving spider, like a female orb-weaving spider.
Like that?
Just like that.
Pointing to my tattoo on my wrist.
Pointing to a tattoo on her wrist. So
yeah, it would be a female.
She had a giant orb-weaving spider, and she was fantastic. Like, well, we called it Henry. I don't know why. It's not really a
Henrietta
name, but Henrietta. And yeah, she would just sit out there all day long. And then one day, you can correct this if it's for them possible, or just a pure coincidence. But it was incredibly windy one day, so obviously her home was moving about quite a lot. I came out one morning, and there was a single thread coming down from it, and it attached a leaf to it, almost as a counterweight. Which I thought was really interesting. I cut it off out of curiosity. Next day later, it was back there.
That's cool.
Which I wasn't too sure if that was just a weird fluke or that was
a
thought out process.
I think there's definitely room for adaptations and mechanisms like that they incorporate into their web building. I mean, they're quite intricate designs, and yeah, if you ever look at I'm guessing you had a good look at the web.
Yeah.
It's got the orb, which is the circular.
Center,
that's why they're called orb weavers, is because they've got that circular. I'm doing like a spiral. I don't know how to describe it other than it's an orb. But then with the Nephila, which is the golden orb spider, it's the one you're describing, they also have these ones that come off to the side, and then that's almost to protect the main web, because it's like...
Yeah.
Well, I think, and a lot of this is speculation because we never actually... This is the other thing, is like the research just hasn't been done because not enough people are interested in it. So, and there's just so many spiders that it's just this impediment that there's not enough research being done just on the specific ones. But they're really interesting, and there has been a lot of research in Sydney with the golden orbs. But yeah, not specifically with the web building.
Well, could you give us the title of your project?
The Effects of Urbanisation on Trapdoor Spiders is the title of my thesis.
Yeah.
And then within that I'm looking at quality versus quantity. One of the chapters is like, is the quality of the habitat more important than the quantity of the habitat?
Okay.
And we found that it is for trapdoor spiders because they're so sedentary and their dispersal skills are so bad. And because they live in their burrow their entire life, except for the males, and they leave and mate. But other than that, the females, and they live up to 40 years in this one burrow that they've established out.
They live up to 40 years?
Yeah. Barbara found this out.
Wow.
This 88-year-old expert. She had a long-term study site out in North Bungalow, which is out in the wheat belt.
Yeah.
And she was monitoring these spiders for, it'll be 42 years this year.
42 years and they're still going?
It was still going last year, so it's actually 41. But
that's
I
incredible.
haven't gone out this year, so because she's retired.
With on trapdoor spiders, for anyone that doesn't know much about them at all, could you give us a little bit of an overview of them? I'm sure this is where your enthusiasm will jump out.
My eyes will start shining. Oh yeah, this is the thing. Like, so once the female's pregnant, they'll brood. They do a lot of brood care within the burrow. So when the spiderlings are old enough to leave the burrow, they'll leave, and they don't go very far. This is part of the problem, but also kind of good for conservation for little urban remnants, but I'll get into that later. So the spiderlings leave and they don't move, like they don't disperse, that's what you call it, to establish, they think it's less than 100 metres, but more often than not it's like 10 metres, if that.
Wow.
For a lot of species, so on average. So yeah, very poor dispersal. And you get these big populations, they call them metapopulations, so you get big populations in one area and then you get another cluster somewhere else and another cluster somewhere else because they just don't move very far.
Does that affect their, I suppose, the genetic diversity of them?
Well, this is the thing. So the males, when they reach sexual maturity, which is like 3 to 5 years, depending on the species, they'll leave their burrow and go find a female. But they're quite good at wandering, so it's thought that they can maintain the gene flow by going and visiting multiple females, and perhaps, we're not sure, but like, and then different clusters of these populations.
Yeah.
And that's thought to maintain the gene flow so they don't get too inbred. But there is that potential, and then that would cause divergence, and you get different species over relatively small areas. Even though they're closely related, it's just because of that. Especially if there's a geographical barrier, like a mountain or something, or a river.
So what causes them to be termed or coined trapdoor spiders?
They have a trapdoor on their burrow. A lot of them do. There's one family that doesn't, but some species from different families. But they're called trapdoors because they have a lid on their burrow that fits usually quite perfectly into the rim of the burrow. So they've got this entrance, and that's partly camouflage, partly maintaining the humidity gradient, and they're sit and wait predators, so they'll sit at the edge of their rim of the burrow, and then they'll pounce out at things passing by. Is
there an evolutionary advantage? They're quite large, aren't they? They're like a palm size, maybe?
Depends on the species. You get some really tiny ones. There's an Aggressiveness tingle is like the size of a pinhead. Like, you know, those like little bobbly ones?
Yeah. That's awesome. I did not know. I thought they were all kind of large, big.
Oh, they do vary. Like, I mean, that's also part of the interesting thing, and I think that's to do with niche partitioning as well. It's like the different species that they prey upon.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's obviously the bigger you are, the bigger stuff you can eat.
Yeah,
you can see those vertebrates and things. There's great photos of them eating lizards and mice and things.
Are there evolutionary advantages to trapdooring as opposed to webbing?
They both kind of sit and wait. If you're talking about orb weavers.
Yeah, or any pretty much like web weaving spider, which is the most common form of habitat, I suppose, for a spider.
Well, yeah, but then you get active hunters as well. So, like the jumping spiders, the ones that like run around and pounce on things, they're quite famous.
They kind of roam about, I suppose.
Yeah, so they're like active hunters, and so are things like huntsmen and wolf spiders as well.
Yeah.
And wolf spiders and jumping spiders are two of the biggest families as well. So it depends. And again, that's just to do with niche partitioning. It's like how they interact with their environment and what kind of prey they're going after. Mm. So obviously with the orb weavers, they're going after flying insects a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And they've made that web specifically for that. Whereas the trapdoor spiders, they're going for leaf-litter invertebrates mostly.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's just different ways of catching prey, I guess.
With you moving on to your actual project, what was the methodology you took, and what was your aim for your project? You said it was to determine the quantity and quality of the habitat.
Oh, that was one of the chapters, yeah. So I looked at disturbance. So my background is kind of conservation zoology. Mm-hmm. So I'm very interested in conserving these spiders, and I think that it's recently come that they are of special conservation interest because they've got this ancient lineage they go back towards like to the Gondwanan kind of era, and they've just been around forever.
Okay.
That's why they call them primitive spiders, the trapdoor spiders as well.
I did not know about that.
Yeah. The scientific name for them is mygalomorph spider.
Mygalomorph,
yeah. So they've got this kind of they call it a basal morphology because it's like what the original might have looked like way back when, like ancestor kind of. Mm-hmm. I mean, even though evolution is obviously still taking its course. Sorry, I get a little bit sidetracked. So my project.
Sidetracks are good.
So my project, quality versus quantity. I was looking at disturbances within the patches, so things like invasive grass and rabbits and rubbish and human disturbances and things like that. So I quantified all of that, or to the best of my ability, I quantified that and saw if there was a correlation between presence of trapdoor spiders and disturbance. And it was found that invasive grass is a major disturbance.
Right.
And I think that's because it replaces the microhabitats that they usually live in. And they do have quite high niche partitioning between microhabitats.
Yeah.
Which I quantified in my second chapter. So I was looking at spiderling preferences. I got some brooding mothers and the cute little spiderlings and put them in like a little enclosure that I'd made with different types of leaf litter, and see if they did have a preference.
Yep.
So I tried to remove any other kind of confounding factors, and then so it was just the leaf litter that they were choosing for, and they did. They went for the ones that actually correlated with where their adults were found, which was kind of cool. So there is that kind of strong urge to settle in the same leaf litter.
Yeah.
But that also has implications because one of them went straight for the veld grass, and because veld grass is like a invasive grass, and it has comparatively poorer species abundance in terms of the prey species that they can eat and the diversity as well. So it's kind of like, that's obviously not a good choice for them to be making. It's like, keep away from the weed, young ones.
He didn't pass high school very well.
No, keep them off the weed, I thought was a good title. So there was implications for that, and veld grass is invading those urban remnants. So in terms of conservation outcomes, it's kind of, we can recommend that management really targets those areas and tries to stop the invasion fronts from coming in too far.
So what would you say are, I don't want this to come across as a naive question, but what is the significance and the importance of having these spiders, and why are they integral to this ecosystem?
Because they're cool? No, I don't know. I mean, the ecosystems in Perth especially are extremely complex, and they're probably nowhere near what they were before humans came. Well, before, white people came, before colonisation. So, no, they've just been around forever, and it's these ecosystems, because we're in an ancient, it's a very old, undisturbed kind of, well, there's disturbances, but that's part of it. It's a very old landscape, so there's been a lot of time for things to speciate, diverge, and have different kind of interactions. So in terms of ecosystem functioning, spiders generally play a huge role in keeping the populations of their prey species in check. So because that's usually other invertebrates, so things like, flies and things for the orb weavers, if there's an explosion of those populations, then that'll have ramifications that disturbs the whole ecosystems.
Yeah.
So, they'll outcompete other flying insects for the food source, and then the food source gets depleted, and then that might not recover in time for... it's very complicated, and it's
Trophic cascade?
Trophic cascade.
I learned it yesterday from someone who came on the show.
Nice.
Learning. Yeah.
Science.
I do science, me.
Yeah, science is fun.
So one question I want to ask is, obviously, do you happen to know any much about the psychology of why people are afraid of spiders? And I suppose
You said white people.
White people, not white people. Well, they probably maybe correlationally are, but
I don't know.
Yeah, why people are so more afraid of spiders just inherently, I suppose.
Honestly, I think people usually are just scared of what they don't know.
Okay.
So it's that fear of the unknown. They're not sure what the spider's going to do to them. They're not sure if it's poisonous or venomous, I should say. Poisonous, you don't go around eating spiders, but yeah, whether or not it's venomous to the point where it'll kill you.
Yeah.
And in Australia, there's only 2 species that can actually kill you. That's the Redback and the Sydney funnelweb, and both have antivenines. And no one's died since the 70s.
Does the size, I'm sure it does, but the size of a redback have a significant impact on how venomous it is? Because I've seen redbacks the size of my thumb that, you can just see the stripe. And then I've seen others the size of my palm here, and they terrify me.
Well, they've probably got an egg sac in their abdomen, but yeah. Or they've just been eating a lot.
Yeah.
I saw one up on a mine site that people had been feeding, and it was just massive. And it had about 5 egg sacs in the... She's doing well. But yeah. No, I don't know. And these are the questions that people can answer if they get into studying spiders, but
yeah,
this is the thing, there's just not enough of us studying them to answer all the questions. One day we will. But if I had to hazard a guess, I'd say it might be the same as with snakes, where they can't necessarily control their venom when they're young. So I don't know if you probably talked to Ashley about this maybe, but when the snakes are young, they have trouble not putting their venom into their victim.
Yeah, okay.
So there's like a mechanism.
They have trouble controlling the amount.
Yeah, controlling. That's the word I was looking for. Yeah, so they have trouble with that. But as they get older, there's a lot of dry bites. It's like they bite you, but they don't necessarily.
Oh, so they still do that when they get older?
Yeah. So they have more control over it. It's like when a snake bites you, it probably doesn't want to. It probably doesn't want to waste the venom on something that's not prey. So
we're going on the energy it takes to produce venom, and they don't want to waste.
Exactly. I think it's probably the same with spiders. If spiders are even aware of that kind of, because a lot of the orb weavers have got really poor eyesight.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So redbacks are web builders, and they've got poor eyesight. So if they do bite you, it's
just because something's there.
It's not that they're aware of you necessarily. They're aware that something's big is coming at it,
Yeah.
So poor spider, just in defense.
Are spiders inherently quite aggressive, or are they quite a passive species? Or if you walk into a web of theirs, are they likely to bite you?
No, they'll run.
Okay.
They'll definitely run before. I mean, if you can imagine from their perspective, they're tiny.
Yeah.
It's not like they're going to go for something that could easily just go smash.
That's true.
I mean, it's... Yeah. No, they're not generally. I mean, I think any kind of aggression is just in self-defense. I mean, you do get some quite aggressive trapdoor spiders, like the males when they're wandering. The mouse spiders specifically, the Miscelina is the genus. It's like they're very aggressive, but I prefer to call it defensive because they don't actually go for you. They're just
defending that.
They're actually maintaining that stance, like they're standing their ground.
Yeah.
And if you leave, they're fine. It's just.
They're not venomous, are they? But these mouse spiders.
Oh, they're like all spiders produce venom.
Oh,
but it's just whether or not it's toxic to humans.
Oh, okay.
It's harmful to humans. And actually, there's research recently from University of Queensland that's using one of the venoms as a painkiller. So pharmaceutical application.
Cool.
Yeah. So some of the peptides or something bind. And I don't know how the chemistry works, but I thought that was kind of awesome.
Do you happen to know why trapdoor spiders are so poorly documented or are lesser known in Perth?
Science communication?
Cool. Take home message. They exist.
Well, I think people are generally getting less connected with nature as people become more urbanized, and there's that loss of interest perhaps. Because as I talked to some of the older generation, and admittedly that's like nature groups, so that could possibly be a little bit biased, but they all know that there's trapdoor spiders, and they're like, oh yeah, I see one, there's one, like used to be one on my property, da da da.
Yeah.
So I think it's kind of just educating the next generation a bit more about what's out there still, or what's left.
Yeah.
Because, a lot of it has been cleared, unfortunately.
It's a shame. So, to finish off, I usually like to ask if you have a take-home message for anyone. Anything you'd like to maybe be more friendly to spiders or make garden friendly, or anything you'd like to advocate. Do you happen to have anything you'd like to share?
Save them. Probably if you want to be less scared of spiders, then look up some information on them, because once you get to know them, they're actually not so scary and quite fascinating. So you might actually go full ball and start seeking them out rather than running away.
Yeah. I suppose you don't need to kill them if they are in your house. If
you
really
don't.
Them, catch them, throw them outside.
I actually actively translocate. I move spiders into my house.
So
really? You know daddy longlegs?
Yeah.
The cute ones that sit in the corners with the long legs. I move them into my bedroom so that they keep all the mosquitoes down. Because I hate mosquitoes. And mosquitoes are the biggest killer, by the way, of humans because of the vectoring of diseases.
1,000 people a day. I think I watched a video on this last night.
So spiders are saving you indirectly by eating all the mosquitoes.
That's fantastic. It's good to know daddy longlegs, because everyone thinks of those as the most passive, I suppose.
Oh, they're so, They
just sit there. No one's scared of them. They don't look intimidating.
Because you can't even see their fangs, I think.
Yeah, exactly. They're tiny.
They're all leg.
I remember getting told some urban legend myth when I was a kid of, daddy longlegs are the most poisonous spider. This was in the UK, of course, so we're not going to take the Sydney part of women. Daddy longlegs are the most poisonous spider in the country or something like that.
Yeah. I think it was
can't bite through your skin, but if you would have an open wound and rub one in, that would kill you.
Yeah.
I don't know how
you're
true
totally
that
going to
is.
do that.
I doubt it is true, but
I think I saw a Mythbusters thing on that. But yeah, again, daddy longlegs. This is the problem with common names as well, is that daddy longlegs here is actually different from daddy longlegs in the States, for example.
Okay.
Because they call harvestmen, which are not even spiders. They're an arachnid, but they're not a spider. And then the ones we have here are true spiders. So
what's
common
the
names
difference of a true spider between an arachnid?
Phylogenetics, I guess. And there's a lot of characteristics like two body segments, and it gets a bit technical.
Okay.
But yeah, spiders generally have two body segments. I think that was the main difference between harvestmen and spiders.
Yeah. Okay.
Whereas harvestmen just have the one, and the legs come out from the one body.
Yeah.
Blob.
It's been great to have you on the show. Thank you very much for coming down.
And that was Leanda Mason. I hope you really enjoyed the show. And if you happen to have any questions about the show or anything Leanda was talking about, you can email us at vaguecomments@gmail.com. And if it's a personal question to Leanda, I can forward it on. If not, I'll do my best to answer what I can. If you haven't checked out our social media pages yet, get on there and follow us. We're posting interesting articles, and you'll also keep up to date with what's coming up with our shows. As always, like I said before, check out acepodcastnetwork.com. We've got some fantastic shows. And I'd like to thank you guys for all listening and your continued support. I'm actually doing a speech next week at the Research Bazaar conference/workshop at Curtin University. So it's great to have the support from a growing community.
Well, it's interesting with genetic stuff because I remember playing a game called Impossible Creatures when I was younger. It's
Okay.
like the best game ever.
Impossible Creatures.
Yeah, it's a game where you genetically splice together animals, like two different animal species, and they're completely different. Like, so it can be a tiger and a praying mantis, for example, and you just pick the traits that you want and then make this animal. It's a strategic,
That's really cool.
But you also learn a bit about animals as well.